verse number 6. For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Paul's life, he started off as someone who was there persecuting, killing Christians. Okay? Gets saved and has a total 180 in his life. And now he's getting to the end as not a coward, but a climber. Amen?
Right, amen.
That's right.
Fought a good fight. Now turn over to 2 Samuel, chapter number 23. We'll read a few verses and I will let you sit down. 2 Samuel, chapter number 23. David, Kyle, 2 Samuel 23. David is nearing the end of his life. And here we get a list of David's mighty men. 37 in all. Men that were not just, high ranking, whether they were or not. They were men that were strong, courageous. They were climbers. Okay, these men were not cowards. We're going to read about a few of them at the beginning here. These be the names of the mighty men whom David had. The Tachmonite that sat in the seat, chief among the captains. The same was Adino the Eznite. He lifted up his spear against 800, who he slew at one time. And after him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the Ahohite. Now, you may laugh at his name, Cheyenne, but after you read more about him, you probably would not want to laugh in his face. Okay? One of the three mighty men with David, when they defied the Philistines that were there gathered together to battle, and the men of Israel were gone away. So we have Eleazar, the son of Dodo. All the men of Israel are gone away. He's standing there. Verse 10, he arose and smote the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clave unto the sword. And the Lord wrought a great victory that day, and the people returned after him only to spoil. And after him was Shammah, the son of Agi, the Harahite. And the Philistines were gathered together into a troop. There was a piece of ground full of lentils, and the people fled from the Philistines. Something that the children of Israel often did. Okay? They fled.
Right.
Just as Brother Perry preaching about, there was a lot of cowards. They may have been in the army. That was their job, to fight the Philistines.
Right.
And yet often they were running away. Verse 12, but he, Shammah, stood in the midst of the ground and defended it and slew the Philistines. And the Lord wrought a great victory. Tonight I want to preach to you about things worth fighting for. You can be courageous. You can be a climber. You got to have direction, right? You don't want to just start moving up and saying, I don't know where I'm going, I want to go up. Well, that's a good place to go. But you have to make sure that you're fighting the right battles. And not just fighting the right battles, but we're going to look at some principles of fighting that these men had here in this scripture. You can be seated. It won't be long, okay? I know those are famous words that we often hear. Maybe not so much in your day, okay? But when me and Kyle were here, and Brother David was up here preaching, it was not uncommon, Miss Paula, to go 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I'm not going to do this anymore. But we're going to look at fighting. Principles of fighting. Real quick, flip over to 1 Samuel chapter 4. Now, when we're doing fighting right now at camp, maybe. We're fighting the flesh. We're fighting making a decision. We're fighting which direction that we want to go. We're trying to make a decision, right? But when we leave camp, the fighting is only going to increase.
Right.
A lot.
Yep.
When we look here, this is 1 Samuel. So Eli is the priest. He's the judge. And Samuel lives with Eli. His mother prayed for him. God gave Samuel to Hannah, and she dedicated Samuel to the Lord. Samuel lives there, but the other sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were wicked. Right. Here again, we see the rivals of the Israelites, the Philistines. Now the Philistines, at the beginning of chapter 4, we'll read, and the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle and pitched beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines pitched in Aphek. And the Philistines put themselves in array against Israel, and when they joined battle, Israel was smitten before the Philistines. And they slew of the army in the field about 4,000 men. You know, we have been through battles in our lives, whether recently, last week, this year. There's battles we've had, and maybe we have faced defeat. Right. Verse 3, and when the people were coming to the camp, the elders of Israel said, wherefore hath the Lord smitten us this day before the Philistines? You ever ask yourself that question? Why is God letting the enemy beat us? Seemingly, the enemy is winning. Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh among us, it may save us out of the hands of the enemy. So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth between the cherubims. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. So Israel's being defeated, and they say, you know what? We need God. Right. We need. No wonder we're losing. We haven't gone and got the ark of the covenant. This is the image of God. This is where God resides, right? And so they go, and seemingly, they bring it with them and say, of course, now we're going to have victory. They were confident. They were shouting. Sounds kind of like when we're in defeat and we come to camp and we say, we're just got charged up and we have God on our side. But we're going to see what happens here. Look at the end of verse 3. It says, let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh amongst us, it may save us out of the hand of the enemies, out of our enemies. The Israelites here, were they trusting in God for their help? They didn't say, when God comes among us, right, he's going to take care of our enemies. Nope. They said, when it comes among us. Right. This, we think about the 10 Commandments that are inside the Ark of the Covenant. Thou shalt make no graven image. And that's not what the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be, but this is what the Israelites are treating it as. Right. This box is what's going to save us, not God. They didn't ask God. They didn't pray. They didn't look for guidance. They just said, we're just going to bring this box in their mind, what they thought of as God. Verse 5, but when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, what meaneth the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they understood that the ark of the Lord was coming to the camp. You may go to camp, maybe go to camp next week, and maybe go to camp in a couple weeks. And you may have motivation, you may have a great shout, and the world may look at you and say, what meaneth this? They weren't like this a couple weeks ago. Right. They weren't acting like this. Yeah. Verse 7, and the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God is coming to the camp. Sometimes we don't even look at God like we should. And yet the enemy says, oh man, they have God. Seemingly, this is why they're so excited. And they said, woe unto us, for there hath not been such a thing heretofore. Woe unto us, who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness. They've heard about God. Yeah. There's people in our lives that have heard about God, seen things that he has done in the past. Sometimes we don't even believe in what God can do. We just think about things in the past. We don't see how that can work in our lives. But yet the world will look and say, I know Christians that believe God. I've seen things that he's done in the past. And the world can say, I'm afraid of what might happen, right? But the world, the enemy, isn't going to back down just because they may see you excited. Just they may think, oh, they went to camp and they're on this spiritual high. God's been working on their hearts, and we're just going to assume now that they're going to be strong. Verse number 9, what did the Philistines say to themselves? Be strong and quit yourselves like men, O ye Philistines, that ye be not servants unto the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight. Don't be cowards. Just because it seems like they have God on their side and they're so powerful, even the enemy isn't going to give up. And too often we'll give up with God on our side.
Right.
But the enemy is saying, you know what? They got God. We're not just going to roll over.
Yeah.
And the Philistines fought, and Israel was smitten, and they fled every man to his tent. And there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 footmen. And the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. Is it really hot in here? Because I'm chilly. Can you close that window?
I'm just fine.
Good, I'm glad. The Philistines think, quit ye like men. Be a man. Fight. The Israelites are thinking, we have faith in it. This box. What kind of fighting are you going to do? Are you going to fight in your power? You're going to fight in something that you think is going to take care of you, but really your faith isn't in God. Your faith is in these things that you've heard maybe, but you don't even know how to act upon it.
Amen.
Go back over to 2 Samuel, and we're going to look at some principles of fighting. There are battles that we are going to fight. There may be big battles that we're going to fight, just like with David and Goliath. He had one enemy, a giant, that nobody wanted to face. And there may be big things like that that you have to face in your life.
Yep.
You're going to have God on your side. But there also may be a crowd, a multitude of things that you have to fight. And, you can take care of things at one time. There may be one battle that you have to fight that will take care of many enemies.
Right.
Look at verse 8. The same was Adino, halfway through that verse. He lifted up his spear against 800, whom he slew at one time. He had one battle that defeated many enemies. There's some things that just need to be eliminated. Some enemies that need to be eliminated. And though it may be a lot, maybe one battle that you fight can eliminate those. Think about, this is just an example. Think about a device, okay? A device, when I was a kid, we had the radio, okay? And we had these, I remember when the first iPod came out. I could close my hand and you couldn't see it anymore. And there was a little dial that you went like this to find stuff. And I couldn't afford that. Who said the other night that there's more technology in an iPhone today than what put man on the moon? Okay, think about a device. Music is on the device. Videos, images, games, communication with people. Just think about how many different things could be handled with one battle.
Right.
You think about one thing that you have. I'm not saying go and throw your phone to the lake, though, because your parents probably say, hey, I paid for that. Shay, did you pay for your phone? Yes, your dad paid for it, and then he gave it to you after it broke. Amen? And it's good. That's a good thing to have, is broken phones. But there are things that we can do. Now, I'm not saying this is in every situation, not every battle that we face, but there are battles that we face where we can take care of many enemies with one battle. Battling 800 men at once was not an easy task. I didn't say that this was going to be an easy thing that you can do, but one battle that you fight, one battle that you can conquer, can take care of many enemies all at the same time. Principles of fighting. Verse number 10. This is Eleazar the son of Dodo. After the men of Israel were gone away, he arose and smote the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clave unto the sword. And the Lord wrought a great victory that day, and the people returned after him only to spoil. There may be times that a battle that you face, that you know you need to face, is not going to be a quick battle.
Right.
Not going to be something that you can say, I'm going to make one decision, I'm going to just say, all right, I'm done with this, and it's over. Sometimes it may make you weary. It may be a struggle to fight this battle. It may be tiring. Not every victory is immediate. His hand was weary and his hand clave under the sword. You know, he had been fighting so long, so hard. The enemy was so strong around him, but he wasn't going to give up. He was going to fight until the job was done.
Right.
Maybe some decisions that you need to make to say, you know, this is not going to be an easy battle. It wasn't an easy decision, and it's not going to be easy to follow through on. But I'm going to go until it's done. Because too often, we may start climbing. We may get a little ways up, and we look up and think, wow, I'm not really any closer than I was when I started. I've made a little bit of progress, but this is tougher than I thought. You know, these rocks are slick. You know, they're farther, the footholds are farther apart than I thought, and I have to work hard. Stick through with the battle, even if it's tiring. Verse number 11. And after him was Shammah, the son of Agi the Harahite, and the Philistines gathered together into a troop, where was a piece of ground full of lentils, and the people fled from the Philistines. Just like we talked about, often the Philistines came and the children of Israel fled. They like picking on the little countries, you know, and then the Philistines come and, oh man, we're getting out of here again. And there is a group of us here at camp. There's a group of us at church. But when you go on your own, the people are gone away from you. Maybe others made a decision that they want to fight in the battle, and then they have turned back and they have fled. No matter if anybody stays with you, that should not affect your decision to fight in the battle. You know, maybe there's going to be one or two that stick with you. We see farther down where there was 3 men that fought together. You can find someone to fight with you. And 2 are better than 1, the Bible tells us. If you can find someone that you're going to say, you know, we need to fight this battle together. I can't do it on my own. You can't do it on your own. But together, we can fight this battle. But whether or not the crowd is there, whether or not there's 2 or 3 there, we can't say, no, I'm going to join those that are running away. Because that just makes a whole lot of sense, right? Why stand there and get killed? Why stand and get slaughtered? But these men said, you know what? Even though I'm alone, I'm not going to give up on the battle.
No.
Verse 11, we see at the end of the verse, it says, the Philistines gathered into a troop, where was a piece of ground full of lentils, and the people fled from the Philistines. Now, what are lentils? Anybody know? Sarah?
Type of bean or
Beans. How many like beans?
I love beans.
I
can't eat too much of it.
Thank you, man. I do not like beans. Okay. Beans, I'm a texture guy.
Make a stand.
When those things just implode in your mouth and it's like mush, just makes me want to gag, okay?
Yep.
So if I am out there and there's an army with me and the enemy's coming and I'm defending a bean patch, okay? In my mind, I'm thinking, you can have it. I don't want these beans anyway. Maybe you'll eat them, get sick, and then we can beat them, right? No matter how insignificant it may seem, even if it just seems like a patch of lentils, a bean patch, just as Brother Curry mentioned last night, just as Brother Cheney mentioned last night, if you allow the devil to get a foothold, you think, well, it's just, he can have this area, it doesn't matter. But this area belonged to the nation of Israel. This wasn't theirs. Whether it's a bean patch or the capital city of Jerusalem, this was Israel's land. And Eliezer said, you know what? This is ours. I'm not going to let the enemy take what is ours. You know, we think, well, I'm just going to let this happen one time. I'm just going to have this one friend that I know is going to drag me down. All my other friends go to church. Everything else I do is right. I'm just going to do something that, you know, is barely against the rules. It's just a bunch of beans. What is the point of fighting? What's the point of battling? But Eleazar said, you know what? this is our land. We let the enemy have this, they're just going to move right on to the next thing. I'm going to stand here. I'm going to make my stand here. I'm not going to keep going farther and farther away and letting them just have land. And, it's okay if they have that. No, he said, this is ours. And they're not going to take it. Verse number 13. And 3 of the 30 chief went down and came to David in the harvest time unto the cave of Adullam. And the troop of the Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim. And David was then in an hold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David longed and said, Oh, that one would give me a drink of the water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate. Here we have Philistines that they're in Bethlehem. Okay, that's Israel. They have fought and they have taken what was Israel's. They have won a victory to that point. And this is when David was king. We think about Saul. He's always fighting the Philistines. David, this mighty David who killed 10,000s of Philistines. So Israel didn't always run away, but they were constantly fighting. And here, the Philistines were in Bethlehem. And David longed and said, Oh, that one would give me a drink of the water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate. And the 3 mighty men brake through the host of the Philistines, and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem, that was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. Nevertheless, he would not drink thereof, but poured it out unto the Lord. So these 3 men said, you know what? We see David as the king. And in our lives, we see God as the king. And God may say, you know what? Something pleases me. I want something. And we think, of everything that you have, why do you want that? But these men say, we are going to fight for our king. We're going to do something for our king, though it kind of seems silly. We have water right here. How many of you like purified water that you get in your bottle from the store? But then, you go to get water from Fox, and you're like, wow, that's like drinking mud, that purified stuff, because that's pretty much what it was, and then they purified it, and other stuff that was in it, but we won't talk about that. You can drink purified water all you want. Jesse. David wanted water from the well of Bethlehem. And these 3 men said, you know what, no matter what it takes, 3 men, we're not just going to defend the area that we're at right now. They were going to take back something that belonged to them, and they're going to break through the Philistine line. Okay, so you imagine fighting, however it was they fought, okay? Let's just imagine we have M4s, okay? And we're rushing the enemy to go and get a jug of water. Now, the fight to get there is going to be tough. But on the way back, you got jugs of water in your hands. And they're still fighting. They said, no matter what it takes, even if we don't understand it, even if it doesn't make sense, the commander oftentimes, most of the time, knows more about what's going on than the average soldier. And the soldier is told to do something, and they think, this is dumb. We're going to charge that hill, and half of us are going to get slaughtered. They don't understand the whole picture. And in our lives, we don't understand the whole picture. We think, what is the point of fighting this battle? Is this really going to change my life? Well, it may. It may change somebody else's life. Sometimes God uses us to help other people. Too often we think all about ourselves, right? These 3 men could have said, man, he wants to drink water. Maybe one day the Philistines will leave and we'll get that city back. These 3 men say, even if I'm just trying to help somebody else, I'm going to fight. There are things that are worth fighting for. There's people that are worth fighting for. The people that are around us here at camp, we're all hearing the same preaching. We're doing devotions. We're learning verses. And when we leave here, are we just going to leave people behind? Say, you know what? They missed church twice. Maybe, they just wanted to go to camp and have fun. Are you going to reach out to somebody? Are you going to reach out and say, hey, we have teen church. We're going door knocking on Wednesday nights, which we're doing this summer whenever we don't have camp going on or Bible time. Come with us. Help us. Encourage them. Proverbs 27:17 says, talks about iron, how iron sharpeneth iron. So man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. You may have friends, you may have people in your life that are discouraged. You may go back to family in your life. Your parents. You may have people that weren't here, and they may be discouraged. You know what you can say? Well, I'm going to fight for you. I don't want to see you leave. I don't want to see you run away. And, I've been strengthened, I've been helped, and I've made a decision that I'm going to do right. And I want you to be with me. There's people worth fighting for. There's positions worth fighting for. Just as Eliezer said, I'm not going to give up this simple bean patch to the enemy. There's things in our life that we say, I can give this up because it's really not that important. But yet we build a pattern in our lives where we think what we're giving up isn't important. But we cannot stop. It's like a little snowball. And we think that can't do any damage until it starts rolling down the hill and just keeps gaining momentum, gaining size, and who knows what kind of destruction it can do, how far it's going to go. But we think that's just a little compromise, right? Don't give ground. Don't give up your position. We know the illustration, many of us, about how the world is constantly, as it tells us in Timothy, getting worse and worse, right? And too often we live our lives where we want to just say, we're going to keep this distance from the world. We're not going to get close. But the world's getting worse and worse. So are you going to stay the same distance from the world? And you today are doing things that the world would have thought was horrible 100 years ago. People couldn't even imagine someone doing that. But yet, because we're not doing what the world is doing now, it's not so bad. The Bible, God's Word, is our standard.
Right.
Distance from the world is not our standard.
Right.
Being better than the world, being better than those that don't go to church, being better than people that don't care about God, that's not the standard.
Right.
Following God's Word is the standard.
Amen.
There's people worth fighting for, there's position worth fighting for, and then there's you, personal. The person that you look at in the mirror is worth fighting for. Paul in 1 Corinthians talks about bringing his body into subjection so that he doesn't end up as a castaway. Even the great Apostle Paul, you think, well, he had everything under control. He knew what it was like to be in the world. He gets saved and he goes the opposite direction. So, of course, he's got no problem. And Paul said, you know what? I have to bring my body under subjection. He writes in the book of Ephesians, I believe, it says, walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Because though you are saved, though your spirit has been quickened, you still have a flesh that you're dragging around. And the flesh fights against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. But are you fighting to keep yourself in the race? Are you fighting? Sometimes we have to fight greed. Psalms, David talks about how the world seems to prosper, and we're not. We want what they have. Sometimes we have to fight pride. We think that we're fighting a better battle than everybody else around us. We fight laziness. We're tired. Who wants to get up in the morning? You know how hard it is for me to want to get up tomorrow morning to take a shower before you guys get in there? I have to fight. Do I want hot water? Or do I want freezing cold water and just not take a shower? But you have to decide what's more important to you. Your self-fulfillment, your laziness, what feels good, or the hard job of keeping your body under subjection. That's a full-time job.
Right.
Just to keep you under subjection.
Yep.
Let alone fighting to help other people. Let alone fighting to say, we're not going to give up this position. Just keeping your body under subjection.
Amen.
The full-time
Amen.
job. Are you going to be a climber or a coward? There is a fight coming. You may be in a fight now, but that's nothing compared to what's coming. In the War of 1812, at Fort Detroit, there was an English and Indian army surrounding this United States military installation at Fort Detroit. And there was about 2,500 U.S. soldiers. The British had seemingly a big force. The American commander was a veteran of the War for Independence. You think, okay, this is someone experienced. This is someone who has fought before. He should know how to make decisions. This isn't his first rodeo. But the British, the enemy, was so good at making it seem like their force was so large that the Americans said, there's no way I can win. Here we have these men in 2 Samuel that said, you know what, everybody left me, but I'm going to stand and I'm going to defend them. Here we have these 2,500 soldiers under this commander that says, wow, there ain't no way that we're going to win this battle. Look how many there are of them. We may as well just get it over with and surrender now. He was occupied. He had family. He had children and grandchildren at the fort with him. He was trying to protect them. Okay. He surrendered to the enemy in a move that surprised the enemy. You know how many soldiers the enemy had? Less than 1,000. The Americans had almost 3 times as many soldiers as the British did. The British, all they did was make it seem, just like Gideon with his 300 men, made it seem like their force was large. And instead of fighting, the Americans said, oh, well, there's no point in fighting this battle. We're just going to surrender without a fight. The British were surprised. His American commanders were surprised. It hurt the morale of the other soldiers. The soldiers that got captured are now out of the fight. Other soldiers are thinking, you know, can we even trust our commanders now? What are we going to do? This is serious business. Are you going to surrender without a fight? Because you think, oh, this job is just too big. There's too much going against me. You know, life is just so easy at camp. But when I get back into the real world, I'm just going to go right back in. Not because I don't want to do what's right. I don't want to surrender. But why fight if I know I'm going to lose? You know, you don't have to lose. You can be courageous. You can keep climbing, and there's people around you that will fight with you, for you, and help you.
Yes.
In the War of Independence, there was a naval battle. And this great, wonderful British Navy ship, because of course the British had the best Navy in the world, they were going up against a privately owned ship that was, you know, put into the U.S. Navy, which didn't really exist. And so the British came up against the Americans, and the British commander said, I'm going to give you the chance to surrender now. You can surrender without a fight. Instead of you just floating off, your body parts sinking into the ocean, you're going to lose. That's what the world often wants to tell you. If you're going to lose, you may as well just give up now. And John Paul Jones said, I have not yet begun to fight. Anybody ever heard that before?
Yes.
And what happened? This little American ship with courageous people that said, we're not going to go down without a fight. They took the British ship. They didn't sink it. They took it over. They used that ship for the rest of the war to fight the British. Because they said, I'm not going to go down without a fight. I'm not going to surrender to the enemy. I haven't even done anything yet. They want you to give up. They say, you know what? We may see that you have God with you, and you're shouting, and you're just like those Israelites that had the Ark of God and said, you know what? Well, we're going to win because we were just at camp and we were spiritually charged. And the Philistines said, you know what? We are going to be courageous. And we're going to fight them with everything we got because we can't let them gain ground on us. And they destroyed the Israelites because the Israelites thought, we don't need God. We're going to go in our own power. We think we have God. But God really wasn't with them because they didn't talk to God. How are you going to fight the battle that is coming in your life? Are you going to run away? Are you going to join the enemy? Are you going to surrender just because they look bigger and tougher than you? Or are you going to say, you know what? You haven't seen anything yet. Because God is on my side. Because I have God's word. I know what I'm supposed to do. And no matter what you think, if God is for you, who can be against you?
Right.
Because he is the one that's most powerful. Let's all bow our heads, close our eyes. You can